number one didn't necessarily go the way Ben Simmons and the rest of the Sixers would have hoped, but as Jimmy Butler said, they're not down 0-4. Just the beginning of a series. We get a chance to get more on this. Part of the broadcast team of the Sixers, Ala Abdel-Nabi, kind of to join us. He is sort of sitting on the bench, so I hope they didn't confiscate your cell phone. We'll get into that in a bit. Those jokes are never going to get old. Let me start with this. It seemed like, from a chemistry standpoint on the floor, things weren't where they need to be. How concerned should Sixers fans be, Ala, about what they witnessed in Game 1?
I think you should be a little concerned because if not for, when you look back at the regular season series, if not for a late Jimmy Butler 3 in Brooklyn, they've won that series and the overall series 3-1 as far as the 4 games in the regular season are concerned in a head-to-head matchup. So they've played well and had success against the 76ers in the past using basically the same exact formula where you spread the floor out and you're basically going one-on-one, daring for the guys to be able to keep them in front. And at times the 76ers have failed to do that, giving up layups not only to the initial driver, but then the guys that create. They dish off and get guys available and basically make scorers out of guys that really aren't scorers.
A la Derek Fisher here. How important tonight is it for the Sixers to get off to a really good start, get the fans back behind this team? You see J.J. Redick warming up right behind you. He's one of the top first quarter scorers in our league in recent years. How important is that to get off to a good start tonight?
Oh, it's huge, Derek, because this is the best first quarter team in the league, averaging right around 30 points in that first quarter, and they struggled and were out of character, and I thought that set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. So you're absolutely right. You know what it's like being on the sidelines. You've got to get off to a good start because you want the crowd behind you. If you stumble, I think the crowd will play against you, and that could be ugly.
A la Jason Terry here. Talk about Philly's bench. They struggled in Game 1. Obviously, Brooklyn has one of the best benches, very explosive in the league. And so how are they going to have some effectiveness in tonight's matchup?
Well, I think the defense is the important part when you think of the second unit because this is a team that relies on their 5 starters to really score. So they're bench hasn't really been relied upon all season long. So you don't look for them to score, although whenever they do score, that's gravy. But they've got to be able to check people, and I think that's really where it's hurt them. But, again, when you look at those starters, Tobias Harris struggled, Ben Simmons struggled. Those guys need to play better for them to have a chance.
As of now, by the way, we found out that Jared Dudley not going to play, so they're one short on their bench with the Nets, and we'll see whether or not Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. I know we've got a Wildcat in the building here in Jet. You mentioned Ben Simmons, Al. I got to ask you about this because the aggressiveness at times is great. That's his nature. But then he seems passive trying to get to the hole. How much of that is fear of getting to the free throw line and getting fouled?
Well, I think it might play a little bit of a role, but give credit to the Nets, too, for what they've been able to do. They're putting 2 guys in the lane. They are doing a great job of getting back and clogging up avenues for him. But what I think Ben needs to do still is he needs to continue to push it, if not for his own buckets, get guys like J.J. Redick and others involved before the defense can go back and get set. So I think if not run for himself, at least run to get other guys' game going a little bit in the transition game.
I don't know if they sent, to close us out here, all this thank you notes, but Twitter was very happy about the cell phone issue. If you haven't noticed, there are memes everywhere. But you know how people are. They try and say that's a depiction of the culture. That's an issue. What have you heard in conversations you've had about what went on behind the scenes beyond the fine that we know about in terms of the aftermath of that cell phone incident?
Well, it was a bad thing. And it was bad optics for sure, especially on live TV, national TV for that matter, during a big game. But I'm also going to be inclined to say let's not blow it out of proportion. I think it's not an issue moving forward. I think the 76ers have done a good job of dealing with it. Now, if it was something that would linger, I think you'd look back on it and say that was a decisive moment or a turning point. But I think it's in the rearview mirror. At least I hope it is. All
right, Ala Abdel-Nabi joining us, which we appreciate, from Philadelphia. 1-0 lead right now in this series for the Sixers. We're going to check out Embiid and kind of where he was shooting from, because this is the interesting thing. The shot chart, and it was one possession that was odd in the first quarter where we were talking about this earlier today. You got 3 fouls, Fish, on Jarrett Allen, and he's taken 2 threes in a row. How much does that signify to you that he doesn't feel healthy and good enough to want to bump, get contact, and go in the middle?
Well, it tells me a little bit that, in particular, without probably practicing a lot at a high level or at least high intensity in recent weeks, that his energy, his conditioning is not at playoff levels. But he got to the free throw line 18 times. So I think he still made the effort. But as Ala just mentioned, the Nets kept a lot of bodies crowding the paint, and they really forced the Sixers to play from the perimeter other than J.J. Redick. And so we'll see if Joel makes an adjustment tonight to really stay around that painted area and impose his will.
Yeah, I happen to be lucky. I got a great guard pairing, and I'm not part of any of it right here, that I'm sure both of you guys, Jet, would love to play with. You did when you think about Shaq. A guy like Embiid, because if he's down in the post, it's creating so many open shots for everybody else, especially because the Nets don't have any bigs. How much better are the Sixers, especially for this matchup with the Nets, when they have him in the post versus outside?
Well, the only thing I will say with that is when Embiid is in the post, because Jared Allen is one of our best rim protectors in our league, and then Ed Davis is a serviceable defender, they're really not double teaming him. The only time the other guys can, take advantage of their opportunities is when Joel gets double teamed. He's had a lot of one-on-one matchups in this series, and so he's going to really get to the free throw line or score a bucket when he's in those situations. So the other guys really won't benefit from that. So until they double team him, then he can be more effective with being able to facilitate.
All right, everything except basically flying down, because we only saved that for one guy who was a shooter. But you look at Jimmy Butler, we know, hey, look, he can make shots, he can make big shots. That was no shock fish. End of the first half, 23 points, hits that buzzer. He kept them in that game. But now you come into game two, and roles probably need to be a little bit different. So how does Jimmy fit in if you're going to get more out of Harris and Simmons and Embiid?
Well, I thought that Jimmy Butler stepped on the gas a little bit, maybe too much, after he realized in the first half a couple nights ago that nobody else really was ready to go right from the start. So as you mentioned, the last part of that second quarter, he really kept them close enough to have a chance. Tonight, I think the balance needs to be better. However, you always need that alpha male in these situations to take the lead and not wait for other people. There were a lot of nights Kobe or Shaq or Pau Gasol, they didn't wait for their teammates. They imposed their will on their teammates as well as the opponent. So there needs to be some balance in terms of game plan. But as a player for Jimmy Butler, he needs to think about doing whatever it takes to win. And if that's getting buckets and just getting the win tonight, we can figure out strategy later. We got to win and tie the series back up tonight.
Last thing quickly, they got to activate Tobias Harris. He'll do anything in the flow, but he's a Long Island kid. You know he wants to be big in this series. He could play.